Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreon, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Michael Kahn, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Will Brax, Melby Styles, Troy Shuker, Bose Nail, Joseph Pizarro, Samson, Maris, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Lost Cat FE, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Mike, Muted, Dick Earth Skeptic, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Rob H, The Real Gabster, Windrider, Liam Nedrick Jr., Abraham Mohammed, Naibai, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic936, Life is Short, Fireball X, theflatearthchannel.com, Texas Mike, Edwin Johnson, and David Wayne Foster. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Also, below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. With that, I'll hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their conversation while I set up for today's live show.
Morning, Tim.
Hey, yep.
Hey, John.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Very well. Can I get a hello from someone in Discord?
Hey.
Hello. You guys are normally chit-chatting away. Don't normally have to ask. Do a sound check, but thanks for doing that.
Yeah,
Good morning, John.
Morning.
Hey, you know what Kiwi's new method is?
What's that?
More aggressive. He's coming in here just destroying these guys.
What time does he usually come in?
Oh, you never know, Neil. Never know.
Morning.
Morning.
I watched that video with the guy and the angular size saying the angle increases. I think he was talking about the angle, like if you didn't change the angle, but like if something goes away from you, the angle to that object shrinks. I don't think he understood that.
These people are little. Over there, they're just further away. That was funny.
Which, by the way, everybody that, and I noticed when I listen to the show, whoever doesn't go on mute after they talk, I hear a lot of ruffling going on.
Off with their heads.
David Weiss sent me this entire essay go through, and he sent it me at 20 to 2, which is like when I'm sat here doing this. Like, oh, David, I can't sit and read what is probably. Let's just have a quick count up.
An essay
30.
based on what? What's the essay about?
About 35, 40 paragraphs. It's about to start a show. I can't read through it right this second, unfortunately.
Oh, gotcha. All right, save it for next week. A lot of people come into flat Earth knowledge.
Lucky you threw that in there. I was going to say they're on flat Earth already.
Yeah, well, they're getting knowledge of it now. They're asking questions, and just like any subject, if there's a certain ongoing belief on the subject, then you say, "Hang on, can I challenge a few things?" And then they say, "Sure, go ahead." Their comment first, and then you bring up, "Hey, but it says this and it says that. How can that be when we have this and this?" I never thought about it that way. And so all the housekeeping questions and all the other factors that should accompany a globe spinning and are just not here, are just not present. And any right-thinking person is going to say, those are good questions. I'm going to look into that. Except for the trolls. The trolls, for some reason, have to have their balls, so they'll just answer those questions in a stupid manner and embarrass themselves. Air is not the atmosphere is one that comes to mind.
I heard a baller in 24/7 yesterday claiming you could measure the radius with sticks and that refraction does not play any part in that calculation.
So they're measuring a shadow and presuming it's caused by the curve of the Earth in relationship to the sunlight, rather than the Earth being a plane and the sun directly overhead would not cast a shadow because it's your zenith position. But a few hours later, it's at an angle to that stick, and it will cast a shadow on a flat plane. Very simple to answer.
I can't
Well,
believe people are still saying that, though. It's like they just ignore everything that we put out. Then they just keep asserting shadows and sticks.
No, it's because they do a Google search. That's all it is. They go, how do we know that's a sphere? In a Google search, and it comes back with that.
Right.
Well, my whole point with that was if you're going to claim that less than a mile away from you is refracted, breaking your measurement that you claimed before, you're also breaking that measurement because you're claiming to look through how many density gradients,
Oh, I
and
get to
one
use
of your
your argument
measurements is
against you.
not your zenith, so you can't claim it's non-refracted in both measurements.
You can't have refraction without an R value, John. You debunked it with the black swan. Their refraction, terrestrial refraction, is based on R. So when they look at any geometric calculations and say, or sticks and shadows in this case, and say, well, in this case, we're not going to be applying 7/6 of the radius when we assume the radius to take this measurement. You go, okay, but you're still assuming your radius, and your terrestrial refraction isn't going to take effect because what? I'm asking, it's not rhetorical. What's their excuse for not applying 7/6 of the radius that they're apparently deriving when they assume the radius when they're measuring a sphere in the first instance?
There's no refraction that day.
Yeah, but I told you they ignore the black swan.
No, not the black swan. Why do they claim that they're not going to use their version of refraction in this instance?
Yeah, that's what he said with the sticks method, that there is no refraction in that claimed measurement. I don't think it's really a measurement. It's like two separate measurements that you're calculating with, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of moot. They're assuming a sphere to begin with.
Yeah, but why can't they understand that? I don't think they understand how reason works.
Because they've been indoctrinated to appreciate that it's, in this instance, acceptable to beg the question because they already know. In other words, they've been given the actual logical fallacy as a defense to the logical fallacy. In other words, to beg the question is to assume you already know the outcome in your premise. Well, they say, I already know the outcome in my premise. That's my defense.
And I was going to say, they're not assuming a sphere. They already know it's a sphere.
It's the same thing, though, isn't it, Neil?
Yes. But
Yes,
the way
but
they say it, like, well, everybody knows it's a sphere.
yeah, it's a way of them paraphrasing back you're pointing out their use of fallacious reasoning. You're assuming an R value. Yeah, because I already know I've got an R value. That's their excuse for it. To actually state the begging the question fallacy, because they already know. Because I am begging the question is what they should say. But they just say it like it's somehow different to say, well, because I already know I'm on a sphere. But no, that's the thing you're supposed to be proving, and to do that is to beg the question. Yeah, well, I already know.
Well, the one claim they had that had any meat to it was that there was a physical blockage that we called a physical geometric blockage we called the horizon. You know?
Yeah. I mean, what we suggested back in the days of the Isle of Man was that it was unreasonable to assume the R value, to derive the measurements, to then place a geometric horizon position on our horizon that we observe. Whereas they haven't got any reason to now assume R because it's been debunked. Why? Because in physicality you haven't got a geometric horizon anymore to measure. So when you're doing measurements and comparisons to photographs in earth curve maths, if it's measurements, then it's measured, right? Well, no, not anymore. You can't measure it. You can't have a measurement to something that can't be seen because of refraction, even if their refraction, nonsensical though it sounds, is based on the R in the first instance. It's terrestrial refraction, 7/6R, so they can't apply that in any way. But, yeah, they haven't got anything to measure anymore.
Hey, Nathan, I put a link, I put a image of a paragraph, a couple of paragraphs in Masturbate to answer John's question.
Well, the reason I'm bringing it up is the guy would not listen to me when I pointed out that it's measured with a tangent plane by geodetic surveyors. And if you don't have a tangent, all you're measuring is a plane. So we need measurements. And like something triggered in him that he just shut down and didn't want to hear anymore.
That's exactly what Craig, Fight the Flat Earth, did when he came here. So he got into his assertions using tangent planes. I'm like, right, tangent what now? Where'd you get that? And that's the point that he shut down. Because he realised that his assumption was to have the tangent. You know, and then he's forced into a position where he's stating it as part of his evidence. And it's like, yeah, where are you getting that tangent from? Not anymore. They're so used to parroting off their rhetoric and hand-waving off the black swan that when someone like us links the two things together, they don't know what the hell to do. And here's somebody constantly on their mic breathing through it.
That's 10th man, I think. Hello, everyone.
Hello, I just moved it, sorry.
When they mention tangent plane, they're claiming a flat surface. They don't even know that. They're claiming, when they mention tangent plane, they're claiming a flat world.
Correct.
They don't even realise it.
Plane, exactly. The tangent part is their presupposition of the zenith point that they've referenced in their datum. The plane bit is the bit they're measuring. Yeah, they're assuming a flat plane. They're justifying it by saying, well, the tangent bit is my assumption of physical geometry based on tangents. Two geometric horizons that have been debunked by the black swan.
Yeah, when you use GPS, for instance, or any supposed satellite navigation system, you're going from one tangent plane to the next tangent plane, to the next tangent plane, to the next tangent plane. You're never, ever, ever addressed as going over a curve. Ever. You're going flat to flat to flat to flat. So when they come up with this locally flat, that's because it's locally flat everywhere, because it's flat everywhere. Tangent planes is the original locally flat. So when people are using GPS, because I said it to this guy called Q Branch, who's around on a lot of people's channels trolling and that. I said it to this guy yesterday. He commented on a video. He's commenting like mad on my videos, and he commented on a video I made asking about GPS. And I said it to him, and he never gave me any rebuttal. He couldn't rebut it. I have someone at the door now. 1 sec.
No, you're absolutely right. So the assertion that you're referencing the WGS 84 in the case of GPS based on a zenith position taken from where you stand doesn't alter the fact that you've got Cartesian coordinates laid out in terms of the mapping that you're actually navigating. So you're navigating a flat map on a flat world with flat topography, and the only difference is the actual elevation changes in the land, the mountains, hills, those sorts of things. But there's no curvature to negotiate, and there's none demonstrated or measured in Google Earth that's apparently based on the NASA pictures that have given you a globe Earth. Well, no, they haven't. They've taken datums that are referenced from your point where you stand, and it's assumed that that's pointing to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth. But then what you've actually got mapped out from that point when referencing a globe, if you were to measure it from that point, is a plane. And that's what the map gives you, because that's what you negotiate, and that's how the world is, a flat plane.
Indeed. Can you show the picture I posted in masturbating until Brian gets back so I can help John's question?
I'll put it up, yeah, it's on.
Okay, so
I'm back now.
go ahead. I'll finish after you.
Yeah, I'll very quickly finish that. No, I don't have much else to say on it, other than when I've told on the global side about GPS, about they going from flat to flat to flat to flat, they either come back and try to kind of have a conversation about it, and then they kind of go away and they don't know, or they just tell me I'm wrong and run off. You know, this is before I even share Jesse Kozlowski's audio with them, who was stating this. You know, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Go on.
No, nothing. You said it well. I mean, it's just like we showed the disco ball with the little squares, tangent plane to tangent plane to tangent plane. It's all flat, locally flat is the tangent plane. They can't answer it. They know they can't. So there's no curve, or else we wouldn't have the show topic.
Yeah. So
refraction.
Go on. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, so this is from David Birch Navigation, blogspot.com. He runs a school up north in Washington, I believe. Charges a pretty penny to teach you how the sextant works and celestial navigation and everything else. The guy knows a lot. But he says here, refraction of light as it enters the atmosphere is still one of the largest uncertainties in celestial navigation. When starlight leaves the vacuum of outer space and enters the atmosphere, it bends down a small amount depending on how high the star is in the sky. This happens because the light is slowed down in the gas of the atmosphere. See refraction in a sink. Thus, with our sextants, we always measure a star height that is slightly too high. A star light from some 30 degrees above the horizon. Now, note this, 30 degrees above the horizon, they don't like taking measurements 10 degrees, most 15 degrees above the horizon. They say don't take measurements because all the stuff in the air and all that. But here he's got 30 degrees above the horizon, will bend only some 1 degree to 2 degrees. If uncorrected, yielding an error of some 1 to 2 nautical miles. Now think about that. If you're going to shoot a star at 30 degrees above the horizon to see where you are with a sextant, get your circle of equal altitude. And if you don't correct for refraction, I'll say it again, if you do not correct for refraction, you're only going to miss your island or your beach by 1 to 2 nautical miles. But the lower the angles, the correction can be twice that or more. At higher angles, it is less, being only half a mile or so at 60 degrees. And at 0 degrees, directly above you, right, by definition for stars overhead. So no refraction overhead. John brought up, hey, if you're a mile out, how much refraction could do anything? Well, we obviously know, not much.
Circle of equal what now?
Altitude.
Equal altitude.
I think when that argument's refined, it's going to be as deadly as a black swan because it's going to prove that there is no celestial sphere. It's going to show the sky is flat too.
Right, but in terms of the navigation, you're negotiating a flat surface. That's the bottom line. That's how it's working.
You need a right angle in order to use the sextant. And
Right.
when the star is over its geographical position, the zenith, then you have your baseline that creates the right angle. That's two parts of the triangle. Brian could take over from here about triangulation. How you get that third one?
I mean, food, sorry. The wrong guy. I wasn't expecting that.
Wow, I thought I was setting you up nicely.
Yeah.
So yeah, you need your
Well, you
your
need
three.
to take a third.
I was
Sorry.
trying to fill in for you if you want to swallow that mouthful.
I can say it now.
Oh,
You need
okay.
to take a third angle towards a third luminary.
Right, you need your third 90 degree on a flat surface
Yeah.
to achieve in the first instance. So you've got your 390 degrees, you've got your three circles of equal altitude, giving you potentially thousands of miles of flat surface. It seems like they've hijacked the optics of what we actually observe, because when you're drawing zenith lines, as I described earlier, they're saying that everything from here to where you can see, that would be your horizon. That's all flat. We're going to negotiate it flat. Now, what 10th is adding to that is that if you look over there and draw 90 degree to the zenith position of that star over there, you can then draw out triangulation positions once you've got three of them, and then locate precisely where you are. Well, when you do that, if you're 30 degrees in terms of the stars that you're actually measuring, you're going to be, the margin of error is tiny in terms of how wrong you'll be when you actually navigate based on your position once you've triangulated with your circles of equal altitude and 90-degree angles to the zenith positions of the stars. As I say, beyond the assumption that your zenith, where you stand, with flat, plane topography from every angle that you can see, angle, meaning you've got to be on a flat plane to acquire it. Beyond that, they say, well, if you were to move to that position, if you mapped out where you could see the edge of your peripheral vision, the horizon, once you arrived there, you could then draw a new zenith and reference where you were on the sphere in that new position, and then everything from that position would also be flat in every direction. And you'd be able to do this triangulation with 90-degree angles to the stars from that position. But they say, no, ultimately, even though that area is also flat, and the area you started on was flat, technically speaking, neither of them are flat. You're on a ball. That's why you've got to take your zenith position and assume you're on a ball before you start negotiating the flat terrain that you're actually on.
Nathan, I got a couple of pictures for you before you start the show to show what you just said.
About 30 seconds. I'll stick at the circle of equal altitude just because it's so relevant. Obviously, because that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, bye-bye ball. Doesn't work. Even your sextants can't work on the curved surface, and yet the sextant works very nicely. So we are on the plane.
You want me to stick the other one? We've got time.
Yeah. It's obvious. There's three circle of equal altitudes on the other one. Where they cross is where you are, and to the center of each of those circles, anywhere on that circle, it has to be flat because it's a 90-degree right angle.
Perfect.
What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected. And if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. Now we are joined by Neil, 10th Man, Brian's Logic, Father of a Stolen Child, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome, one and all.
Good morning, everybody.
Hey,
Hello, everyone.
good morning. Happy Friday.
Hello, good to have
Morning,
you all.
morning.
And also welcome to Arwen, who's just joined. Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
Hello.
Hello.
No evidence for that. Zero evidence
Yes,
for that.
bending of space-time.
Zero evidence for that.
Any
Come out of
scientific
your dream,
evidence of
Arwen.
gravity, Arwen? Specifically scientific evidence, cause and effect reasoning, observed phenomena.
Sorry, say again?
Scientific evidence of that which you claimed in regards to gas pressure without a container. You said bending space-time. That would be gravity. So any scientific evidence thereof?
But we don't know how to alter the bending of space-time, right? So we can't really very manipulate it.
That's a no. Anybody else? Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Mass doesn't attract mass, that's for sure.
No, that's correct. 106 years out of date.
You can't have scientific evidence of a mathematical model because you can only test that mathematically.
When you say test,
Still,
hold on.
I still think
Hold
it's a
on.
good solution, though.
Terminology,
Story
slight issue
solution.
with that terminology, Brian. What do you mean test?
Well, you could mathematically create scenarios where that would mathematically work.
Oh, another terminology issue. What do you mean work? You're using terms that I consider physical terms. Work, right? Sweat coming out of somebody. You can picture what work is. Doing work is something physical. Well, that's physics, physical, right? So, another terminology issue. The reason I've got a problem with test is because, that, again, in physics terms, test is an experiment. And when you're qualifying how maths can work when you're testing, it's like, oh, hold on. These terms, while they might be interchangeably in a colloquial sense, in terms of physics, no. We're definitely not performing any tests when we do maths. And it's definitely not doing any work.
But that's why I use those terms. That's why I use them specifically, because I also use the term maths. Right? It's an oxymoron. It's a paradox. Can't be done. That's my point. Can't be done. Can't do that. Can't test mathematics with mathematics or with that test. If you know what I mean.
Indeed. Taking
Not
it from
physical.
the abstract and putting it into the physical is not possible. Physics deals with the physical. Maths deals with the abstract.
But you can still calculate it, though.
That's fascinating.
Nowadays,
Go on, John.
I was going to say nowadays, not only do you have to deny science to believe you live on a ball and say it doesn't prove anything, but you have to deny measurements.
What? What measurements?
Of the flat plane we dwell atop.
No, but that's
he's
curve function collapse.
No, he's
right?
contextually flat
Things
Earth.
are not
Arwen.
where
That's why
they seem to be.
we're both confused because he's contextually flat Earth for a change. Right, John. Indeed. You not only, as a globe-believing fundy muppet, have to be a science denier because everything you punt under the title or banner of science is actually pseudoscience because you don't have any science. You deny real science and claim things such as science doesn't prove anything when that's its sole purpose. Well, that's making you globe-believing fundies science deniers. You also have to deny the nature of the measurements discussed, although you're obviously not privy to this watching live, in the pre-show. Because in the pre-show we're discussing how it's measured flat. How the assumptions of zenith positions to presuppose spherical Earths via WGS-84, if you're talking about GPS, are merely just that. Presuppositions that then go on to use Euclidean measurements to measure it flat. They measure it on a plane, because that's what we're dealing with.
Thousands
Yeah,
of
if the-
miles flat.
Say again, Arwin?
Thousands of miles.
Curve function collapse. It's not fair.
Not physics. Curve function collapse, regardless of it being made up or not, is you describing how somebody in physical terms observes it flat. That would be your opening disclaimer. To disclaim the dirty detail in the title would be to say curve function collapse. What does that mean? Well, a curve function's a mathematical derivative, right? It's a probability. A probability of you seeing curve. The collapse bit is what we actually observe, right? Are in the flatness.
Right. And it proves that when you look at it, any curve function it may have had will collapse. So, yeah, it's always going to present itself as a flat plane for as long as you try to detect anything about it. But, yeah, as long as you don't do that, then you can still calculate it as a globe. Always works.
Usually things that are flat present themselves flat. Usually. That's the way I always see things. They present themselves flat because they're flat.
They measure as flat because they're flat.
Yep. But
What's
when
that I
you
hear
say
you crying?
present
Correct.
themselves to you, that means that you're observing it. So of course it is going to present itself flat because the curve function
That's
is
way
collapsing.
too logical.
What curve function?
The curve function that 90 whatever % of the Western world are under when they assume that they can reify a mathematical heliocentric sphere Earth concept into something that's physically observable. Well, that notion is curve. And now Arwen's describing that as a curve function on a sort of joke, tongue-in-cheek joke about the double slit or quantum eraser experiments, where you've got wave function collapse. Well, he's saying curve function is the Western worldview that you can measure or perceive in some way a curved Earth. You can't. And every time you try to, you find it's flat.
Exactly.
No, I understand that. But everything is flat. It's
That's right,
thousands
Neil.
of miles flat. The oceans are thousands of miles flat.
That's right.
Well, only when you actually go out to physically measure it or visually or detect it, scan it. Yeah, that's all forms of detection. And that's when the curve function collapses.
Right. If you're trying to navigate it, you're going to navigate it flat because it is flat. But that's obviously because you're doing something in physical terms. So you're going to do it in context of flatness, like, again, we discussed on the pre-show in terms of triangulation with the stars. You know, you're going to be negotiating flatness because you couldn't be deriving 90-degree angles to the zenith point of the stars to triangulate unless it was flat. So you've definitely got to actually negotiate it flat because it is.
Well, if you can't use optics to figure out if you're on a ball, how are you going to figure out you're on a ball without optics?
You go to a fake place called
calculate it.
Narnia. I mean space, and just claim on the telly that people have seen it from a fake place you can't get to.
Well, wouldn't
No,
that be optical?
there's a better way to do it, Grassroots. You just calculate it and then prevent looking past surfaces because that's typically where the curve function collapses, right?
Well, anywhere in physical reality, Arwin, anywhere. So therefore, to negate the curve function collapse, just to play along with this complete horseshit that you're dribbling into the show, right? If you can take it away from somewhere that's physical, then the curve function collapse won't happen. It only happens when you try and observe your reality physically. So if you can have these things take place, i.e. the photographs of Earth from space, in a non-real place, then you can negate the curve function collapse and see it as a ball. Not see it as a ball, but you know what I mean.
It's got to be
What you
close
could
enough, right?
do-
But if you go away from the flat surface or the apparent flat surface, right? The further away you go from the surface you're looking over, the less the curve function collapse happens, right? Because it's really dependent on how close you are to the surface you're looking over.
Correct. And
For
then
the-
you've got to take it to some sort of isolated environment, maybe something like a studio. And then when you're in that isolated studio TV environment, you can negate the curve function collapse altogether. Obviously, you then have to reintroduce elements of reality with things like screens and CGI. But that's all good. That's a necessity. You've got to.
Besides TV, what
Otherwise,
they
people
show
are
us-
not going to understand.
Besides
right?
TV, and what they show
Neil.
us on the videos, has anybody seen a sphere anywhere?
They play basketball.
Sphere Earth, you mean?
No. But I was making a new
Yes,
argument.
sphere.
No, Neil. They only claimed pictures of it, or claimed people who are the only people in this argument that can definitely be labelled liars are people claiming to be in a second law of thermodynamics violation sky vacuum called outer space that is a fake place. And in this crazy narrative that we're describing now, that is the only way to achieve curve function collapse. But obviously, if you're in a studio environment to keep it nice and controlled, you've then got to reintroduce those elements of the reality you're trying to prove in CGI or with screens to achieve it.
Yes, it's just getting a little frustrating because we never observe spherical Earth, yet we're debating about it every day. It's driving me bananas.
Yeah, but that's the whole issue, right? They had to CGI it because otherwise the people wouldn't understand.
Hold on,
they don't. It's very complicated to understand the world is actually a sphere when every time you try to observe it, the curve function collapse happens. So they just had to show it more as it really is in order to make people understand.
No, this is a different ongoing issue with Neil, specifically, Arwin. Just give me a minute with Neil. Your issue is that society, on the whole, believes that they're on a sphere when to you, and this is, I'm going to phrase this carefully, what you're telling yourself, it's obvious, observable, and you can declare it with, all the gusto that you muster. Well, your issue is that you want society to follow your model. You want them to see the world how you see it. And that's something that you're going to drive yourself nuts with, Neil. This is, I think, the third occasion we've brought this up on the show, specifically for you. But your concerns that other people don't see it the way you see it are going to drive you nuts. And there's no benefit to you.
No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if there was evidence that presents it the way they're telling us it is, I'm not getting it. You got people fighting tooth and nail for this globe, and evidence has been presented. If you presented the same amount of evidence to me that this flat Earth was nonsense, you think I'd still be here?
Yeah, I don't disagree. You are, but you're not at peace with it, is my point, Neil.
Oh, no, I'm not at peace with this nonsense. Get it?
No, I understand,
Get it right.
Neil. I understand, Neil. It's basically, we all observe the same world, yet a large portion of the population seem to want to keep on trying to tell themselves it's a completely different thing than it is. Because it is. The globe Earth and flat Earth are two completely different things. So it's a complete denial of reality. And that's really what bothers Neil. Because Neil, I would say 95% of the time you live in stark reality, Neil, yes?
Yes.
I think most of the time, most people don't care either way.
No, Neil doesn't. Neil lives in the Matrix, and he wants the Matrix to change, rather than stepping away from the Matrix. So by Matrix, I mean the societal element, the people who are part of a construct that see the world in a different way to you do. That's the Matrix. Something that potentially you may never be able to change, Neil. Now, while there might be optimistic viewers that go, yeah, we're really changing the world by debating this subject, whereas I would hope, my best hope for the audience would be that they find peace with this, as opposed to want to change the world with this.
No, I want to change the world. Sorry.
Well, I don't want to change.
Finding peace is not action orientated enough. Sorry. But if you're happy with that, that's fine.
Well,
Okay.
I want to change the world by helping people to ascend and master all of it, right?
Can you?
When you master the propaganda, then it no longer damages or doesn't necessarily have to damage you. You'll still be confronted with the results of it. That way, to basically get a grassroots grip kind of on the situation for everybody and find a way through.
Master.
Are you still talking about curve collapse?
Yeah, we are.
Collapse.
Yeah, it's linked into the curve function collapse represents the societal/physical link between the Matrix version of our reality, sphere Earth, and the natural, observable, demonstrable flatness that we actually dwell atop. Curve function collapse is the transitional state that Neil's being dragged into this argument because he isn't finding peace with it, and it's his world. You cannot perceive the world through society's eyes. you can only perceive it through your own, and you can only conform with society, rebel against society, or detach yourself from society. And there are obviously grey areas in between all of those different states. I remember back looking at Freeman movement and people, who was it? It wasn't Pete Shea. Oh God, I can't remember to credit the guy, but he described if you're familiar with the straw man, which I'm sure a lot of you are, I'm not going to detail it in any length here, but he described that concept as a coat. Sometimes you have to go out, you have to put on your straw man coat, and you have to partake in certain aspects of society that you may not want to. You put your capitalized letter name badge straw man coat on and walk into the DVLA, or whatever you guys call it over in the States, the place where you register your car, and you sign over the DMV, and you sign over your ownership to the government. So you become the caretaker of property that ain't yours anymore. Now, you do that so you don't get pulled over by the police, and you can have a peaceful life when you interact with that aspect of society. And when you get home, you take it back off again. You hang it back up, and you don't think about it anymore. You don't worry about that capitalized straw man that you've had to become to do that. But do you then say, well, now I've taken off the coat, I need to get in touch with everybody in my community and explain to them that that's what they're doing when they take part in that process, and that they need to detach at some point from it. Well, it's like, no, you need to, if you're looking for peace, understand it so that you can find peace from it, because that is changing the world, because the world is only what you experience. You cannot experience a societal worldview. It's impossible. So therefore, changing the world is appreciating the actual nature in this particular context. Obviously, this is flat earth debate, and then finding peace with it. Then you've changed the world. I've changed the world. For me, my world's changed.
All right, let me give.
Hold on. It's like saying, this is what it's to me. It's like somebody keeps telling you that 10 times 10 is 50. You're gonna smack them and say, no, it's not. It's 100. Let's
try it in a different context, Neil. Let's say there's as we get called it a lot, a crazy cult, right? Howling at the moon, full on bonkers cult, right? Now, you laugh, there's going to be something similar to that out there somewhere in Western world.
Yeah.
There's going to be something like that, right? Now, are you the one who appreciates that howling at the moon isn't going to bring aliens, for the sake of argument? Nice and topical. Do you need to bang your head against the wall for the rest of your natural-born life to convince those people in that cult that they're not going to bring aliens by howling at the moon? Or do you just remove yourself entirely from that nonsense, crazy, batshit insane group of people, right? Now, don't get me wrong, there's going to be obviously grey areas in this description to this very, very basics. So I'm not saying, family member's part of it, and I've got to try and I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about you in this particular scenario. Yes, you will have to overlap, and there'll be a grey area when it comes to heliocentric interactions with the normies that interact in the Matrix. You're going to have to deal with that. But are you like one of the members of the Nebuchadnezzar? Are you a chosen one with glasses out there to physically alter the nature of the Matrix? I don't think so. I think these systems are so ingrained in our current society and so well fortified and protected by the people who initiated them that you're never going to make a dent, right? But what are you trying to make a dent in? Well, you're trying to make a dent in the walls of the compound that houses the people howling at the moon. Now, don't get me wrong, they sell the best kumquats there is, so occasionally you've got to go through those gates and negotiate with them. And it's a pain in the ass, and they're completely bonkers, and sometimes you just have to interact with them. But are you going to stand on the outside of their gates telling them that they're all nuts and that they don't need to howl at the moon? No, you just go and buy your beautiful kumquats from them, and you leave, and you moan at it when you get out if you have to. But you don't let it dominate your life. Now, that is akin to your position currently, Neil. You're fighting with a society that you're never going to change.
That was a great description, Nathan. Thanks for that.
Yeah, that was nice.
All right,
Well done.
Except for the couple.
I would say
Just
Neil,
have a
you
little
go
laugh
first,
to yourself about it and move on.
You've just reminded me to give a shout out to Thrice 8 Hermes. He puts a jester on his backdrop when he does his monologues. Great guy. But he's a bit anti-religious. If you're a Christian, you might not necessarily like him all that much because he does knock Christians a fair bit, with rightful cause, in my opinion. Just drop that in with a slight squint. Anyway, Thrice 8 Hermes sticks a jester, and jesters, if you've studied clowns and things of that nature, which I have, they're typically depressed, right? They're morose, deep people, right? Out there trying to clown and cheer up the people, right? Well, their contemplation and depression is born out of a realization that you can't necessarily do anything about the normie society, except perhaps find peace with it. And then you turn around and just laugh when you see people doing normie things or talking in normie ways or not recognizing clear rhetoric and programming. You just have to laugh because otherwise you go bonkers or depressed.
Well,
Exactly.
what I would
Exactly.
say is this, right? I'm going to give an example that goes against that completely, right? If the whole world knew what GPS actually was and how GPS, right, as they know it, the global positioning system actually works, then would they all be so convinced that they're on a globe? No, is the question. They wouldn't. And if you don't try and tell them those things, they'll never know about it. So for me to be involved in this also means that I have to put in an effort out in the world, as whatever I can do, to try and show people what they believe is not reality.
Why?
I'm not going to be.
As long as
Hold on,
you're
hold
at
on,
peace
let
with
Brian get
it.
to the, hold on.
Hang on, let me finish.
As
long as you're
Let me
at peace
finish.
with it, then
Hang on, let me finish. Let me finish now. I won't be knocking on people's doors. I won't be approaching the man on the street. But I will be continually trying to get the information out there that we're not on a globe Earth.
Why?
Because that is what I'm passionate about. I want people to know the truth. I want people to want the truth. I want people to know the truth. I'm not going to tell a lie. I don't mind it. I want people to know the truth. It's a lie. That's that.
Okay, one more time.
That's what I was
Hold
gonna
on, hold on, Ted. Hold on. Just one more time. Bearing in mind I have just listened to you. Why? Why do you want to get them the truth?
Why do I want to tell them the truth? Because it would be a better world if they all knew the truth.
Would it? How'd you know that?
Yeah.
How'd you know that?
Because we wouldn't be living in a lie.
What makes you think that would make it a better world?
Because it's self-evident.
Yeah, because it's self-evident. We haven't found out. I mean,
Whether it's better or not, it would be true.
Yeah, exactly. It would be true, which would be better.
Perfect. I've led you beautifully. So that means that your world is better then, Brian. You listening, by the way, Neil?
Yes,
Sorry,
I'm
Nathan.
listening. But one thing.
So you've
Who's
just
the first
explained to me.
people-
You've just explained to me in very clear terms that the world is better for this truth, and I gave a lengthy monologue about it being your world. Therefore, based on what you've told me, your world, Brian, is better. Correct?
No, my world is more honest.
I wouldn't even look at it that way. It's all truth, not just this truth. All
Hold on,
truth
Ted.
is important.
Let me
Taking
ask you a
Brian
question.
down
Who's
a
the
route
first
of
one to
contemplation
come
for the benefit of Neil. By
Right,
logical conclusion, you've said, I want to tell the world because the truth will set them free. The truth is better. The world would be a better place if they had the truth. Well, you have the truth. Therefore, by logical deduction, you are in a better world now, aren't you, Brian? That's what you're telling me.
Oh, Nathan, you know what?
Yeah, I am.
Neil,
I
just
am.
listen. Don't
Yeah.
say anything. Just listen, Neil. Go ahead, Brian.
Leave me.
Well,
Okay,
it
leave
makes
me
me
respond.
angry because I see how you're leading them. And yes,
No, it's okay, Neil.
you're right.
It's okay.
Yeah,
It's okay.
Neil,
I-
just spare your ejaculations. Just let Brian respond because he'll forget the point otherwise.
I am at present not in a better world, but I'm hoping with my actions and the actions of other people like me, including you, Nathan, that we will end up in a better world. It's not a better world yet, but I can see
dear.
that the
So
world
there's
can be better.
that's a problem. See, I'm so glad that Brian's a really honest person, possibly the most sincere person here on the panel. I say that hand on heart, right? That could have gone wrong for me, this point I'm about to make. So Brian's logic fails. Hey, that worked nicely, didn't it? Because his logic stacks up that he'll be immensely happy and his world will be a better place for having this. Yeah, that's not necessarily the case now, is it? So he's chasing that dragon and projecting it onto society. Now, Neil knows where that was going. That's why he interjected. And so does Brian. He wouldn't have been able to lead me to this place. But your logic doesn't stack up, Brian. Because if it did, you'd be the most happy person in the world. Now, by contrast... I'll go on.
No, you're off there, Nathan. You're totally off there.
We'll get to you, Ted.
Hold on, can I ask you a question here?
Let Brian respond, then we'll go to Neil, then we'll go to 10th. We've also got someone, I think it was Rams, who's been waiting patiently as well. So first Brian, then Neil, then 10th, then Rams.
I never said that it would change. I never said the word happy. Happy, I didn't say the word happy, I said better. Now, better can lead to happier, right? But I can't guarantee everyone's going to be personally happy. But I can guarantee that if the world knew what it really was, that it would be freer. People would know where they are. People wouldn't be living in a lie. Which is better.
Okay, Neil, go ahead.
Okay. Who's the first people when you're in a cult or in a deception? The people that come out of it are the ones that try to get the other people out of it, like Leah Remedi with Scientology or whatever her name is, that actress. Tries to get them out. So now we've been removed. Our eyes have been opened. So now we fight to open the eyes of others because we care. And you care, or you wouldn't be doing a show. No matter how you deny that you care, you care.
Nah, I disagree totally.
Yeah,
I'll come to that later in terms of my view, because I see it as a psychopathic system. And there's no contact rules that apply that would lead me far away from that conclusion in terms of going back and knocking on the walls of the cult. No. 10th, go ahead.
Yeah, those who have ears will hear. Those who have eyes will see. There's a deception. Doesn't matter what the deception is. It could be a religious deception. It could be on this cosmology or the nature of our reality with the flat earth versus the globe. It's just deception overall. And if you are a person of empathy and you know the truth on that subject, you want to share it with people you care for. Now, whether they accept it or not is up to them. And whether they do or not doesn't change how I feel. I have the truth and I want to share it. Now, if someone comes and says, well, your truth is a lie, and I'll say, well, show it to me, because I really want the truth. And if you could show me I'm mistakenly thinking a lie is truth, I'd like to know. So if you're geared the way I'm geared, I want truth because the truth will set you free no matter what the subject is. Now, if you're saying the way you do, Nathan, because you're kind of like, I don't care. It's up to them. I'm just going to find a way to live in this matrix that benefits me and my family. Well, that's fine. That's the way you want to handle it. But the way Brian and Neil and I, at least on this point, have a convergence, is that we'll share it with people as long as they want to hear it. If they don't want to hear it, we'll move on and we'll share it with other people. And then the numbers will grow and grow and grow, and people will come out of this lie. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a noble action.
Good point.
Exactly, then.
Okay, Rams.
Well, I think a lot of it comes from projecting your own battle with what quote unquote truth.
I completely agree.
Well, truth is objective. It's not subjective.
It varies from person to person. What is true in this statement isn't true for you or I.
That's not true. The person varies. Truth is objective.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. And for you and I, this doesn't hold true. We've got a very different, you personally, Tent, and I personally. And that's Rams's point. He might not feel this way at all, but that's his point. But
hang on. I got to interrupt. That's the way we assess it. But truth assessing us will not vary.
Well, hold on. We've gone from you to we and us. What's going on?
But what I'm saying is, if I say to a baller, using the arguments I've learned from the show, and prove to him, beyond the shadow of a doubt, using the same language and the same construct of meanings, and he still looks at it and says, air is not the atmosphere, straight is curved, all this junk that the ballers say to us, then I'm going to say, okay, you're violating the rules of our language. The meanings you're changing in order to still believe in the lie. I'm done talking to you. You're not an open vessel to even hear about it or go back and forth with. So I'll just go find someone else who wants to come out of whatever lies they're in and go to the truth, because the truth is not going to change. And I'm always trying to live my life to truth. So I'm going to change. I'm not going to ask the truth to change.
Fair enough.
Yeah, there was only one truth, regardless if there's 8 people arguing and only one of them is actually telling the truth. It doesn't matter if all 8 people believe their own stories. Only if only one of those 8 is true, then that's the only opinion that matters, because everyone else's opinions are just opinions. It doesn't matter if people feel they're like, I can speak to a baller and he'll be telling me that it's definitely a ball. And he'll believe that as the truth. But it's not the truth, is it? That's different.
I have a point. It's not exactly what you all are talking about, but no one ever changed the world who believed they couldn't.
Well said.
Exactly, John.
That's right. It only takes one man. I am William Wallace.
And I'm saying you can only experience your world. So I specifically said, John, just to not exactly counter that, but, I have changed the world is a statement that's very personal. Whereas...
How do you say that? How can you say that?
My world has changed.
No, the previous statement. Your world. It's not my world. It's our world. It's the same world. There's truth and deception commingled together. The key is to find out.
Well, no, your perception...
Why is it my world?
Well, no, because the perception is what builds your reality. How you process your world is your world.
No, I understand how you're saying that, but again, we're back to what truth means versus my version of truth. My world and my perception is formed by my mind. If I'm deceived, it's the wrong view. If someone leads me to the truth, then I could perceive it the way it's supposed to be perceived. It's still the same world.
The separation. There's a process in the trenches here that Arwin describes with the curve function collapse, where you've got one particular measurable physical world and one particular perception of the world. Now, at that point, you just have pain. That's trench level pain for the globe believers when they have to defend the undefensible in terms of geometric horizons and such like. But for your average normie, that's why I say my world has changed, that isn't subject to that cognitive pain. That said, I was to a certain degree. I was very conscious of it when I was a globe believer. That aside as well, let's just pretend for a second that I wasn't conscious of it. That was my world. That just was the world I lived in. So when I contemplated and thought I was having deep philosophical thoughts as I stared up into the bleak, never-ending sky vacuum, that was the context that I experienced my world in a very literal way. That was the experience I had. I can even go back now, cognitively, and mentally picture me being there, looking up at the sky, contemplating the bleak vastness of it, even drawing pictures about it to conceptualize it in my mind, with a little bit of cognitive pain there at the same time. Again, but brush over that. Now, my world isn't like that. I don't have the same emotions, the feelings, the perception is different. And that is your, but in context, my world. That is my world. And it has changed. Now, has the world physically changed? No. You can't physically change the flat plane we dwell atop. That won't ever happen.
No, I think we're talking along the same lines, just in a different way. Your world changed or your perception of the world changed because you found the truth. And that's exactly what Brian and Neil and I are saying. So you share it with those that want to hear it. and their world will change. It will match the truth of the world rather than the perceived version of the world.
Perfect. Paul has summed it up beautifully from
Yeah.
the chat. There's truth.
You can lead
and
a
then there's
horse to
personal-
water, but if
Bear
the
with me.
horse
Bear
doesn't
with
want to
me. Middle of a
drink,
sentence.
then
Bear with me.
don't get
Bear with me. Bear
frustrated
with me.
trying to
Middle
force
of a
it to
sentence.
drink.
No. So Paul has summed it up beautifully from the chat. There's truth, and then there's personal convictions. Precisely. Well put, Paula. Sorry, Rams. Go ahead.
I was just saying you can lead a horse to water, but if the horse doesn't drink, then don't get frustrated at the horse for not drinking, or try to
You
force
give
it
the
to
horse
drink.
salt. You give the horse salt. Give the horse salt. He'll be thirsty and he'll drink. And we give them salt every time we bring them truth.
You know what? You really ponied up on that one.
Okay, Nathan.
Yes.
When you found out, right? Because I remember you telling this story several times, because it's very similar to my own story.
Come on.
When you found out that the Earth was not a globe and it was flat, did it not make you excited? Did it not have a big change? For everyone here, did it not create a positivity in your world that you didn't have before, a freedom, like a release?
Yes.
So that's why I want everyone that I can possibly give it to experience that.
Yeah, but
Okay.
it's what led me to that experience that was more important than that experience, because
there we go.
that experience is inevitable once you start seeking genuine truth yourself. If you're not looking for that, then
Is it not just a chemical high that you're chasing?
yeah.
So you've experienced that. I know exactly. When you said that, what goes through my mind is waking my wife up. Going, it's flat. And I go, what do you want? Me being very, very excited. Middle of the night.
I do see Brian's point though, because sometimes for some people that experience begins, or that journey to that experience begins with somebody saying, hey, it's not a ball, right? Or something like that. Just having the topic brought up to you, out of nowhere, like we're not thinking anybody's going to do it. That's how that experience or that journey begins, I think, for some people. Because there are people that still to this day thank me for bringing this to their awareness. I'm like, well, you don't have to thank me too much. This is what you've experienced every day.
Number of years ago,
You know
and
what
I
I'm saying?
just
Like,
laughed it off. I wasn't ready at the time.
Do a couple of quick shout outs. So shout out to Lex Luthor for joining as a penguin, and shout out to Godzilla37, who says, pursue the truth or live in the lie. Shout out to 10th Man. Thank you very much for the super chat, Godzilla37.
Hey, can I jump in real quick and add something?
Push can, go ahead.
Thanks, Nathan. So it's for me, it's not just like spiritually knowing that the satisfaction I get of knowing that the Earth is not a globe. Like my life has actually gotten better. Like I make more money now. Maybe it's just like my outlook on life is better, more optimistic about things, but it improves the quality of life, for a lot of people. And I think especially for you, Nathan, like just think about it, like what you were doing before, traveling, doing the rep stuff. You said you had a lot of not a lot of free time, but you had money. But now I feel like, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but would you say that your life has gotten better just knowing that the Earth is flat?
It's fundamentally changed the person I am. So, as you correctly
Hell
identified, prior to this, I was a rep. I was jet setting, very money orientated. Had a flash car, and I considered myself James Bond as I flew all over the world. Well, from that to wanting to be, I don't want to say wanting to be poor, but wanting to be time rich, knowing that means you're going to be financially worse off. That said, that's not true, because I've got such amazing support in what I do by disseminating this information, which might seem counterintuitive, because I'm saying, well, just in a kind of selfish way, you need this to affect you personally in a positive way before you want to go out and change the world, because if you're like Brian, you're going to describe how it'll make the world a better place. It's like, well, is it a better place for you personally? And if it isn't, it's like, well, work on that, because that's all you've got, your own perception of the world and the reality that you've got. And that contemplation made me think, well, having time to actually experience life and the world, if you want, is much more important than having more money in my pocket or having a flash car. But like I say, I've received support. I've still managed to keep a admittedly 15-year-old car that I bought very cheap on the road, maintained nicely, shiny clean, because of the support I've got via a direct consequence of doing this subject. Now, I don't think that's true for many other subjects. I don't think many other subject matters would say, if I like to use this as a parallel, but the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial, I'm sure there's people who are supportive of channels that are similar size to mine, but it will pale in comparison if you stacked up the support I get me on this channel with this subject versus somebody who's covering that particular topic. By contrast, they wouldn't get anything like the support I get. It's phenomenal. I reach out and say my exhaust's broke and it's fixed. It's $1,000. Well, it was $1,000. Paid for it. It's done. I can take the kids and do the stuff and still do the show and everything's running tickety-boo because of the support. Now, that is a bonus because I anticipated hard times. It's going to be very difficult to make money on YouTube by doing something that I am also passionate about. So I want to drop this in right at the end of this because this conversation's got to round out at some point. But yeah, the passion for the subject is why we're all here. I'm not going to make it seem like I'm just selfish. I'm like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. Who cares? Once you figure it out, just go into the world, skip amongst the daisies and everything. No. Obviously, I make a daily show about the subject, so don't get the wrong impression about why I'm saying these things. I'm just trying to get it across to Neil, bringing it back on focus point, in terms of his specific circumstances where every time he details his frustration, it's at a societal level. And it's like, maybe you need to relinquish yourself from those societal things, those chains that are bringing you back to the walls of the nutcase asylum that are howling at the moon. Maybe you need to sever the chains rather than knocking on the wall.
Oh, those chains have been severed. But the funny thing to me is, I don't have a flat earth debate show. You could run and hide all you want. You are changing the world, and you want to change the world, and you care. Otherwise, you would not have a flat earth debate show.
Yes, Neil.
Maybe. Well, as I say, if somebody's going to come along and have the experience I've got, that's why I say earlier it could be a Brian chasing that hit, right? That experience is it cathartic? Is that the correct terminology? I think it is. It's a paradigm shift. Obviously, there's people who brace against this, so I'm not talking to you, fundies. In our you trust. Go in peace. But for us, right, for us,
Excellent.
that experience is like no drug you can describe, right? There's nothing, it gives me goosebumps just detailing it, right? Hearing those words emanate from the iPad, from Math Powerland, for me, that's life-changing. Like, completely life-changing. And I can totally understand someone like Brian going, I want to give that to somebody. Like a pusher. Like a drug pusher. Going, have some of this. This is beautiful. This is the best drug you'll ever take. And it is.
It is.
It's not, I'm not downplaying it. There's a reason there's so many people like us on this subject talking about it with the passion that we have. Because it's amazing, right? I'm not going to deny it. And you want to share that.
It'll make you wise beyond your years.
Yeah, I disagree
I
with
still
that too.
find no joy in it.
Neil, I've got to argue with every point, Neil, today. No, contrary to that, Neil, every single time I research something, I realise how little I know about it, and I feel that little bit dumber for not knowing. So whereas you can be Dunning-Kruger, cocksure, and full of bravado when you're on the globe, and you're basically a wiki-parroting moron, right? When you actually look into those things and realise, oh, I thought I knew all about this, that does not make you feel more intelligent. Now, if you can spin as I do, into wonderment and possibility, then that's great. But for a lot of people, that's devastating,
Well, for me, it wasn't, because I learned a lot. I didn't know anything until I started listening to Flat Earth Debate, you, QE, everybody else. So it made me wiser.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Like, it does make people wiser, because as you're saying, Nathan, it's funny to think all the things you kind of realize, all the stuff you don't know. Well, that is wisdom, because then you know your parameters. You're not living in fantasy thinking you know what the sun is when you don't. Let's say, just as an everyday example, you don't know. So, but that is wisdom. It's wisdom to know what you don't know. That it's wisdom to be intellectually humble or humbled. Gives wisdom, because not inferior, not intellectual inferiority, but humbleness. It's like I don't know all these things. That is wisdom.
Yeah, being having humility and being humble and having wisdom. I don't know, right? So you've got a pile of this is known information, and then you've got another pile that is unknown information, right? And then you've got to start looking at the pile of rocks in each of these two piles, and this subject means that you start looking at the rocks in a pile that were known facts, and one by one putting them in the other pile of unknown stuff. Now you're saying, well, the process of realizing, well, I thought that the horizon was the edge of a sphere. Let's have a look at that. Oh dear, let's put that in that pile of unknowns. What's the horizon? Is it the diffraction limit? No, it's not as simple as that. Is it caused by weather? No, it's not as simple as that either. Have we got a concise and detailed explanation for what creates a horizon? I would say no. Now, does that mean we won't achieve that? I'm sure there'll be very smart people in the future that can qualify it in a more realistic and hopefully concise way that we currently can't. But we can definitely tell you what it's not, right? We can give you a modus tollens logical consistency about how if the Earth was a sphere, radius 3959, taking up that rock from the pile of known facts there and having a little look at it, and seeming clever because I can put together a modus tollens formulation that then means that rock gets put into the unknown quantity pile. Now, at the end of that process, what you're left with a circle that's got a label on it that says known facts, and there's sod all in it. And then you got this other pile, unknown stuff. Or you can even relabel stuff I thought I knew was clever because of it. That's the new pile. So you're looking at these two piles going, there's a lot more I thought I knew but now don't, and a lot more stuff to ask questions about. And while I can tell myself that makes me very clever, it really doesn't make me feel that way. Maybe that's just me personally, but that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, it's Nathan, it's not the information that makes you wise. It's the ability to discern the truth out of the information.
Yeah, that's
and
kind of what I
giving
was
someone
saying.
that
That's what I was about to say
experience
as well.
or that ability to discern the truth from information, that's worth sharing.
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar. It's like, basically, Nathan, it's like this. You know to test all claims. You didn't know to do that before. You just accepted a claim. Someone say, that's this thing, and this thing is true. You go, okay, that's not what you do now, though. You test all claims. You go, oh, really? Well, what is the evidence for this? How is this validated? That's testing all claims. That is wisdom. You don't just accept. You accept what you don't know.
Who's the smarter guy? The guy with the box of rocks sitting there labeled known facts? Hasn't gone through them, just has a box. Or the other guy who has gone through the box and has asserted, using logic and deduction, maybe some experimental validation, that these are not unknown. These are not known facts. Who's the smarter guy?
Well, according to Michelle Thallard, those are her cousins.
That's another rock from the pile, isn't it? All of it has come from everything. Started at a big bang, and then through gravitational accretion and the process of stars being born, and then fusion, and then eventually the density becoming so intense that it explodes. That process creates all of the matter that we have. That then disperses into the universe, and the heavier elements are why we've got things like gold and various other stuff dispersed throughout our planet. Right? Wow, that sounded so clever. Let's have a little look at that.
Well, let me
Right.
let me share this. Let me share this real quick one here. So I was talking to the golfer that I'm working with, and of course we had this long trip to Washington State. So I put on the highlights of your show through the car Bluetooth system, and he said, "Well, pause there. Let me ask you a question." So pause there. So he said to me, when you first brought this up, I said, well, I'm gonna go check it out because he's not a crazy guy. But then he went and started doing his own research, unbeknownst to me, until this car ride that we just had. And he says he looked at this, he looked at that, different channels, and then he said, the questions you asked, they're just solid. I mean, when you said about time, can you show me a box of time? That really got me thinking. It is a concept. It is something that we made up to measure things, but it's not a causal force, like you said. So just a joy in my heart to hear that he took what I said, didn't immediately take it, but then went and did his own research. And then now he's telling me what time is and how it works. That was just, I mean, this goes back to fruits of your labor, fruits of QE, fruits of everybody on the panel. And then we have this incident, and I happen to be there to witness it. This is what this whole show's about, right?
Yeah, indeed. But as I said, go on, Brian.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I actually I don't want to retract what I said a while ago about the wisdom. I'm totally behind that. But the actual truth was actually staring me in the face, and because it was so obvious, like everything, when it's totally obvious, you look straight past it. The real wisdom that you gain from this, and you've gained from this, from being involved in learning about what you don't know, is not the acceptance of what you know and don't know, and it's not that. It is that, but it's not that. The real thing you learn, the real wisdom, is that to not be afraid of not knowing, because that's the problem with our opposition, isn't it? They're all afraid of not knowing. They need to have some kind of an answer, because without that answer, they're terrified. We're not terrified of not knowing what the moon is.
Indeed, it is. It's fear and pain, cognitive dissonance, all of those things that we experience from trench level are what generate the high level of ridicule that we have to endure. Now, the thing is, that is also, it's the same. While I've described you wanting to project this joy onto other people, perhaps, the flip side of that coin, the inverse of that, is the Globers wanting to project their pain onto us. That's why we suffer the ridicule we do. The contemplation of, everything being taken out of the metaphorical pile and having to be studied and then realizing you don't hold it anymore. A lot of people don't want to relinquish that. And, that causes them cognitive dissonance when information's presented that cannot be held conducively or concurrently with whatever they're holding. So, that's what we experience. But it must be telling, or I would think it was telling while we're having these sorts of conversations to a globe believer, that we're describing, for the most part, the joy of this subject while they're, fighting the flat earth? Another analogy I could describe, instead of banging on the walls of the nutcase asylum, would be to say, if you're describing the scenario of getting beaten in a boxing match, it's what you've got to do, son. You've got to keep. It's like, well, no. If you hate that, just don't climb in the ring anymore. That's the solution. If your moan is that you're constantly, losing badly and being hospitalized or something, it's like, yeah, don't get in the ring then. No, but I've got to get in there and fight. Well, no, you haven't. But that's the analogy for them. It's not like, no, I want you to experience that joy of realizing that actually the nature of the world is better than we've been led to believe. Well, no, for them it's not that. It's quite horrific. It's quite a torturous process to hear this stuff.
Nathan, if I
And if
may,
you're getting in that ring and getting hurt all the time, then that also means that you haven't trained hard enough. You haven't trained well enough. You're not equipped well enough to be able to go out there and fight and win.
exactly, that's why I'm using Neil as my scapegoat or my example for the audience's benefit when I say, well, look, it's not necessarily the case that you need to see yourself as Neo in the Matrix or as Morpheus in the Matrix. You know, you don't have to be that person. You might not necessarily be equipped to do so. But the thing that you can take from this conversation is that there are benefits in terms of the pleasure, the joy that you can take out of life if you're not about banging on the walls of the asylum, which many people are, and it's because they're angry. That is the overriding point, right? For Neil again, right? You're annoyed, right? You're pissed. They lied to you. And you want people to know not only that while they argue with you about how you've been lied to and you're just trying to tell them the bloody truth, for God's sake, right? But ultimately, you've been lied to, right? It's a bloody outrage. Now, I could totally relate, but you've got to move past that.
Let me share something here. So the whole point is, and you rounded it off nicely there, when we go and we share any truth with someone is because, you know, we care and we want them to see something that maybe has been submitted to them from a deceptive point of view. So it's a lie. You've been lied to. Let me share something with you. Hey, there's a big lie out there. Let me get your opinion on it. Now, I say it that way because I'm setting it up for the real thing that we get to check out. We get to check out if that person is even interested in truth or do they want to stay in the lie. So I've ran into many people, right? Even Christians. And I say to them, hey, this is a big lie. Let's get together. I want to share my findings. No, I'm not interested. Don't bring up the subject. You know, we're friends. We'll talk about anything else. I just don't want to talk about this. And I say to them, okay, that's great. We can talk about everything else but this. So you just showed me a little bit about yourself. You're afraid. Why are you afraid? Why? Because if I'm being lied to, you should care to correct me. But here I'm saying you're being lied to and I want to help you. And you say, no, not on this subject. Don't bring it up. But yeah, I'll see you for that barbecue.
I get that all the time.
Go on, Chocolate, take over.
It's fear. You've summed it up beautifully. It's fear. You know exactly what it is. They're scared. I use Conspiracy Cats in a public example and his interview with Haunted House. It's fear. That's all it is. They're scared. It's terrifying.
Fear of the unknown. Fear of the other. Fear of the unknown.
Told you, I've been told what you're saying. I cannot continue this conversation. I have a headache, all of that, because if anything that you're saying is true, it just means that my entire life I've been lied to, and that scares the hell out of me. That's like a direct quote from a coworker of mine.
Perfect way to end. If you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Primary Stream, stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, though, this is where we bid the live audience farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either Premiering Stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
That's been a year ago.
It's fascinating to me because when I walk into work and people will bring it, like, I don't walk into work and tap everybody on the shoulder. Hey, it's flat, it's flat, it's flat. I don't do that. Like, I've reached the point where everybody knows what I'm about.
Yeah, I would hope
so
not, Joe.
They all know, right? So I allow them to bring it up to me, right? And then when they do, and then all of a sudden, like, if I, start to respond and they get a little triggered, I'm like, well, I mean, again, you brought this up to me, so obviously this is somehow irking you and not me. And now you seem to be getting triggered, and now I'm wondering, why are you triggered? Because I don't think the floor is a ball that's going places. I don't get that. That's not my reality. It's not yours either. But if that's what you want to think, then you're very allowed to do so. But
Yeah.
you didn't have to start this conversation, but you did.
I think John's more upset that he's no longer getting prevailing wages. He's got to work for a flat rate.
There's no
Hey,
upward
I
power.
love space. Hold on. I loved space. I did. I loved the whole idea of it. It was just like so much of my imagination was tied up in it. I loved the idea of it. I loved everything about it.
Yeah, but just think a God view. We don't know what else is out there, what God has prepared for us. And it even says in the Bible, eye has not seen, nor ear have heard, nor have entered into the thoughts of man what God has in store or planned for those that love him.
John, there's two things I'd like to say to you about that. I understand that you love space, but you can still love space. But you have to remember, you were never going to go there anyway. So it was only ever, regardless if it was real, you were never going there. So the point is that it doesn't matter if you love it or not. It doesn't matter if you love it, because you can still enjoy it. Because, as I said, in reality, you were never going to go there anywhere. Anyway, it doesn't matter if we're on the globe. Me and you weren't going to space.
I can't watch sci-fi now.
But you
I can't
think
watch.
that you were going there.
Hang on. Hang on. I understand, mate. I understand. But see, that's because you saw, maybe you saw it as so much of a reality. Yeah, maybe so. But my point is that you weren't going there anyway. You weren't going to be an astronaut. I wasn't going to be an astronaut. It wasn't going to happen. If it was real, I'm saying. This is obviously speculation. But the other side of it is, yeah, space is not real, but heaven is. Then something is up there. Something is there. It's created. So when I say heaven, I don't know what heaven is, but the point I'm making is, how do you know what's there is not way, way better in space?
Well, I'm not saying that I'm like Cypher and I want to be reinserted into the Matrix. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that the feeling that people are describing about being happy about this, I'm not identifying with that.
Well, I hope it hits.
But you identify with a place that you've never actually experienced. That's the thing to me is weird. Like, I like space movies and all that shit, but this hurtfulness that people get when they find out it's not real, it's like, well, it was just an idea. And what's the idea? Oh, the harshest environment we could possibly know. And that's where everybody wants to go and spend their life? What? To me, it's nonsense. Not saying that how you feel is nonsense. I'm just saying, like, this thing where people get hurt because space is not real. I can't go to Pluto. Like, what? Well, what do you have to go through to get there?
Yeah, but look how they made it, Chalker. Look how they made it. They made it this place that is very interesting, and maybe one day we are going to go there. And they feed you cartoons like the Jetsons and all of these other movies, and maybe not in our lifetime, but
nothing
kids' lifetime. And
compares
it's an
to the
escape.
Earth. But nothing compares to what we already have right here, all around us.
That's my thing. There's always this, we need to leave the Earth to survive. We can't survive anywhere but Earth. You guys that tell us the story, tell us that. So how the hell can you remix the story and now tell us, we have to go to the harshest environment we've ever fucking imagined to survive? What kind of
We're already surviving. We're already surviving and thriving.
Well, you as a person, you as an individual, as somebody pointed out earlier, aren't going to experience this, right? We've all agreed on that. But yet, when it comes to describing it and how people get upset about it, number one, they have experienced it. They experienced it in a suspension of disbelief when they were watching Star Wars, or in a suspension of disbelief when they were watching what they were told was up in the sky vacuum on the ISS or the moon landing. So they have experienced it by way of suspension of disbelief. And when they're describing us not being able to go there when we disagree with it, it's the societal we. Every single pronoun or whatever it is you used was all we. We're not going to go to the moon anymore. We're not going to go to Mars anymore. Oh no, we can't go out into the vast regions of space then. It's like, yeah, because people have lived that experience through a suspension of disbelief. And when they do have that as their projected worldview, their world, they do it in a societal manner. We have been to the moon. That will often be the defence when we used to have those arguments here, wouldn't it? Well, we have been to the moon because they're seeing it through the societal mind's eye. It's something that cannot be achieved. You can only achieve your own experience of this world, not a societal we've been to Mars. Therefore, I can just about get behind the cognition of what Mars is like.
Yeah, but John.
Yeah, we're living it
John's,
vicariously.
That's well said.
but John's point was that he got fired for it, and so there's a deeper scar there that John's gone through because he chose to accept the truth over the lie. So, I mean, how many of us got fired because we're flat earthers?
Well, what's the story? Why did you get fired? Would you go in shouting these are all wrong?
Well, John, if John ever does go back to the globe, I'll understand it. Now, I won't expect him to come arguing about it, but I'll understand it.
He's not going back to the globe. He's happy where he's at. It's just like a painful first marriage, and now you're about to get married again, and you're saying, "Oh gosh, I thought I had it right the first time." Okay, you know what I'm saying? It's like one of those things that none of us here have it because we didn't get fired for it.
Yeah, the globe is like some nagging old bitch whore that you were married to that you really do not want to go back to.
Yeah, I want to talk about my ex, the globe.
Globia instead of Gloria.
Globia. Round and round she went. She just wouldn't stop.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was a constant circular argument.
She used to make me dizzy.
Oh gosh.
But relatively,
I
she
just
didn't
couldn't
take up
see
much
her
space.
R value.
Well, I missed what Nathan said. Perhaps go ahead.
Said she didn't take up much space, though, relatively speaking.
Yeah, but always the center of attention.
Did I
That's a
got
good-
face?
Well, she was always vacuuming.
She was so fat, her belt size was equator.
Okay, I think we found a new part of the show now.
She was very fiery inside.
But there are
Oh,
certainly
gosh.
examples of people who've transitioned back. So you've got Chris Monk and now Ranty, and I'm sure there's a few others that people will be able to list now, or maybe not.
Did
I'm
you
sorry.
say Ranty?
I'm sorry.
He didn't transition anywhere.
It's funny. I'm sorry, but I can't identify as a globe anymore.
Hold on. What do you mean? My understanding is that a guy who used to come on the Flat Earth debate and argue for Flat Earth, my understanding is he's now a glober. You're saying no?
Absolutely not. He might be saying he's a glober. Come on. Nobody saw more P1000 shots of the flat Earth than him. Do you know what I mean? No way he's a glober. No way. But hey, if people want to believe it.
Well, you are what you eat, right?
Yes.
Well, he's eating globe and dining with globers. So, what you want?
Well, it's all for that. It's all for the gain. It's like Cypher.
Like Cypher.
Whatever reasons
It don't
he has.
It don't matter. It's fun to watch. Actually, it's fun to watch someone do that. It's like, really?
You can't go back once you see the truth. And that's why John is so depressed. Father of a stolen child will go back in a heartbeat if he thought he could deny the truth to himself, but he can't. If you can deny that truth, you can do that. That truth goes into a closet. You lock that closet. You put a load of chains around the closet. You take the closet, you went out to a cliff, you drop that closet off a high cliff, and it goes into hundreds of feet of water. You can't look at that at all ever again.
But there's 5% of
But it is
society.
always there.
There's 5% of the Western world that have no interest in truth. Not really that relevant to them. In fact, most of their existence is predicated on lies. And that particular branch of society are called psychopaths. 1 in 20 of us in the Western world. So that branch of people, doesn't matter what, they wear masks. So if the mask in that metaphor is a group with a group mindset, then you stick on that mask as a psychopath, and that's the mask that everyone will perceive. And the mask will be made up of every single personality trait and value that is held by the group, if that's what's being infiltrated by the psychopath, or more likely being controlled by the psychopath.
Well, that's what we see with all the politicians of all the different countries. They may have gone in a certain way, but if you look at them now, and especially here in the States, they've been in office for 20, 30, 40 years even. They're total psychopaths. In one news story, they'll say this, and next news story, out of the same lips, same mouth, they'll say the opposite, and everything's hunky-dory. And they're total control.
I mean, not
it's
all,
nonsense.
Obviously, not all politicians are psychopaths, but a high concentration, if you're going to look at where would be the most psychopaths? Well, in politics, absolutely, without question. Certainly,
well, I know that's
media as well. That's heavily narcissistic. So you've got certain groups of society that simply aren't interested in the truth, and if a set of values needs to be adopted, this messes with people when they encounter a psychopath and they get to know the psychopath. The psychopath seems like the best person in the world. They're really nice to them. They share a lot of the same values. And then in a flash, they abandon all of those values and take on sometimes the complete antithesis of those values, the opponent's values, averse to your values that you held dear with that person stood next to you, and you can't understand it, and it leaves you all distressed. Yeah, that's just psychopathy. That's what they do. Whatever values they need to adopt in whatever time frame suits them will be the values that they adopt. Truth doesn't come into it.
right. No, well said. And I've seen it. I mean, I'm 62, so I've seen it. I've seen the people I voted for who said one thing, and then later they did the opposite of what they told me to vote for. It's like, man, you big liar. I'm never going to vote for you again. And then you find out the whole system's that way as you get older and watch it. And then you say, well, I can't be, this one party, whether it's Democrat, Republican, they all lie. I mean, not every single person, but the leadership and the way they eventually make things go for society, that's based on these psychopaths who all they want is power, money, and you say, well, forget it. I mean, these people are nuts.
Yeah,
I have
they're
a
running the
question.
show. That's your matrix. That's the leaders of your matrix. That's the kings and queens of your matrix. Just detach yourself from them. This is the overriding point I tried to get to on the live show, when Neil was like, no, we need to save the people from the nut house. You need to go back and bang on the walls and say, look, you're part of a cult. While they scream at you, yeah, Manson said there'd be people like you. Yeah, that's what you got to deal with.
But see, I do the opposite. I agree with you totally, but at the same time, I will stand up to them and I will tell them, I'm an alpha male. I can't help it.
Yeah, I don't actively seek it, but that's a T I will definitely cross when it comes across me. I have no bearings about that. I have no problems with it. But I don't go tap everybody on the shoulder and say, hey, it's flat. It's flat, right? Don't do that.
Yeah, we're not trolls on the baller shorts, are we?
No, I don't show up to people's houses at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. Can I talk to you about flat Earth? Nah, I don't do that.
And a good majority
You
of
mean when
people
it
are
comes
just
around?
busy living their lives, just trying to enjoy themselves, trying to have a good time.
Exactly. There's plenty of ball believers, normies, not trench level fundies entrenched in their doctrine, but normal people who experience all of the joy and wonderment of life because they don't give heliocentrism a second thought. Now, don't get me wrong, in many instances, they're probably people who aren't heavily attached to media, the papers, magazines, the internet, television, all of those things. And they're just people who get out and ramble and enjoy life and go out for walks and go swimming and do all the things that I enjoy doing, you know what I mean? I'm talking about my experience, so I can relate it to other people.
Don't take things too seriously. Like, don't take yourself so seriously either.
Right. And in this arena, you're going to get a lot of ridicule because you're going to get a lot of monsters that want to project their pain onto you. And you'll be the bearer of that pain if you're there for them. So just don't be there for them. It's like in psychopathy terms, if you're trying to get advice on how to get away from a psychopathic boss or a psychopathic boyfriend or girlfriend, then the advice is always the same: no contact. You know, don't get involved with them. Don't see
But
them.
you see, hang on. But you see, what Chocolate and I answered comes from our demeanor, meaning Chocolate's an alpha male, I'm an alpha male, and when we actually have done our research and know something to be true, we do not back down, no matter who. But we don't go looking for it, as he said. I don't go looking for it, but I'll talk about it. If they have an appetite, I'll continue. If they don't, I stop talking about it. We talk about something else. But if they're coming after me, there's no dying this dog. I know Chocolate's not going to die, and so I could only look at it from the prism of an alpha male. I can't imagine being a beta.
Well, I'm a very special snowflake, so I don't necessarily see it the same way.
No, I know, but I'm just saying I can't help it because I'm this way. I can't ever imagine being a beta because I detest betas, because they don't stand up, because they don't take a fight when it needs to be fought. Yeah, I look for peace, but when there has to be a fight, I'll fight. Because that's what alphas do.
You've also got to be able to recognize when somebody is not going to be convinced.
Can you guys hear Rams? Right, Rams was after
No,
that sentence.
yeah, but hold on.
Go ahead, Rams.
But
you've also got to be able to recognize when somebody's just an impossible case and that they're not open to being convinced, to even hearing you out. And so trying to win someone like that over is just like your own ignorance.
It's foolishness to do that.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I got a better question. Does Rams hear anybody when they talk?
Does what? Say that again.
Neil is saying.
Do you not hear Rams? My question is, does he hear anybody when they talk?
Yeah, I appreciate that Rams often will just start a sentence while someone's talking.
Okay,
I
I'll hear what
apologize
Chocolate was
for
going
that.
to say.
It doesn't matter who's doing it. Just carry on the conversation.
Chocolate.
Chocolate, what did they call you? I was just saying, sometimes I'm called a dictator and a radical for my views, and this might not even have anything to do with flat Earth. These are just me using the logic that I have and applying that to everything, not just flat Earth, just everything. Like I'm the type now, you can't just say things to me and I'm just going to eat it up and accept it. Like with everything else, if you're going to make claims, you need validation for that. And that's how I feel about it. Now, that's how I approach everything. And then when there are times that I'm called like a dictator, radical. It's like, what? What do you mean? I'm actually sitting here fighting for us. Why am I being called that? But okay, if that's how you feel. I can't help that.
Chocolate, do you deny the existence of atom bombs, Chocolate?
You know what though, Chocolate? I've been called that myself. Before I was ever a flat earther. It's just my way, where I just kind of stick on something. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But if I'm right, I'm right. It's kind of like that. But the problem when you get told something like that, what the person is really saying is they want someone else to be in charge, right? But they don't want it to be you. It's like someone's got to be the boss.
Exactly. Because I'm like, how the hell? Yeah, because I'm like, how on earth are you calling me that when I'm sitting here literally fighting for the same rights that you have at this place? but I'm being called a dictator by you. So apparently you just like following rules that make no sense. Because me, I'm about common sense. If you're gonna give me a rule, it's got to make sense. So I can't just
logic.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what you're saying is that the atom bomb debate is not the only thing that blows up in your face. All these other subjects.
The atom bomb debate. What the fuck? Who's talking about that?
Critical mass-based explosion, right?
It'll be out. by the
Oh,
time
you
this-
mean the ones that we saw on television back in the day that didn't destroy the actual video, or
No, no.
that looked like Gumby?
Chocolate,
The stop motion explosions we saw.
They had
Those?
nuclear deterring cameras back then, specially created for the Manhattan Project.
I'll do a quick
Camera
plug.
function collapse.
My God, it's noisy. I'll just do a quick plug because it's coming out if you're a member. But if you're watching this and you're not a member, then it'll have already come out. It's WMD versus FED. That's the name of the trimmed out part of the debate that they're referencing, just so you know for context in this show.
I never saw it, but I came in after my trip and I heard about it, but I was just using it as a pun. So
No, not after your trip. No, that's a different show. That's LSD versus FED. This is WMD versus FED.
Well, you know what? You know what happens with our I'm just going to bring it back a little bit. Something, I can't remember who it was. I think Rams might have said it just before the end of the live show, is that people don't want to accept that they've been lied to their whole life. But that is not... See, this is the thing. People think that's what it would mean. But it's not that you've been lied to your whole life. It's that the whole world have deceived themselves. And because a small group of liars got away with a lie. So it's not that everyone around you has lied to you. You have deceived yourself by not accepting the reality that you saw and see every day. That's all it was. It's like, okay, there is a group of liars, right? They are pretending to go off in outer space, right? They're a group of liars. Fair enough. But I lie to myself if I tell myself it's a globe, even though I fly an airplane, that proves it's flat. I tell myself it's a globe, even though I measure it as a surveyor flat. Who's lying?
Yeah,
to me?
take responsibility. Take responsibility for your own discernment over what is true.
Just no curve function collapse. What it is, what makes it impossible for you to actually perceive or measure the globe.
Oh my
and
God.
Just stick to the
there
math.
we go.
Just stick to the math. It always.
Stay in the lie. Stay in the lie, Arwen.
It's not a lie. It's the truth.
Math? Who cares about math?
It's not a lie. It's the truth.
Flywin.
Everything I say is true.
Just again, just for the audience's benefit, if you're familiar with Arwen's show, right? We don't tend to see Baldwin on Arwen's show. In other words, we only get Baldwin here. If you actually watch Arwen on his own show, he's very, very flat Earth proactive and will debate the trolls in his chat all day long from a flat Earth perspective. Yeah, he comes here, and I think it's just a bit of release, maybe a bit of a relief for Arwen to not have to do that. So he just comes here and becomes Baldwin and enjoys it immensely while we all get frustrated and groan.
Yeah, I share some of the poison that I have attained during my show with you guys.
Thank you.
Maybe you need to return the favor before your show, Nathan. Maybe you need to de-stress before your show, go into Arwen's and just ball the hell out of it.
It just take away my...
No. The cycle completes when Nathan actually grinds down on an actual trencher. And those are the ones that forward me my pain that I then share through Baldwin with you. So the cycle is then complete.
I see. So it's a full-on life cycle of this ball pain.
You caused it, Nathan. You deserve it.
Technically my fault. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, WMD versus FED. It's out now if you're watching this on a re-up. If you remember, it comes out tonight, 9:00. And for those of you who are here now in the moment, yeah, I'm releasing that show tonight. So it comes out at 9 p.m. UK time. So I've made minimal edits to it. Sometimes it's nice to keep the contextual flow and the gaps and the stumbles. Sometimes I'll heavily edit them and just make them flow better. Whereas in this case, I thought it was better to not do that. Yes, I've done some minimal edits, but it's, you know, for the most part, it's just that chunk of that show. So be here or be sphere.
You know what the worst thing about that was? The guy who was in, I can't remember I can't remember them. I met him. I've seen him before. The man's name, the baller who was in. He was having a conversation with us up to that point. There was actually a conversation being had, you know, about currency and different things like that. And there was different facts, and you know, it was just like a conversation, an interesting conversation. But then it got to that point, and he couldn't see how what he would consider evidence. The same exact thing. All he had was what any of the rest of us had as supposed evidence, and he couldn't see how that was just not enough. Like he couldn't see how that was just not enough. You were saying, where is your evidence? And all he could come up with was that, and he couldn't understand how you couldn't see that as evidence. You know, he couldn't let go of his belief that it was evidence. And so consequently, it all went wrong. Whereas up to that point, there was actually a conversation being had.
Yeah, like it would
Evidence
work.
of what?
Well, like it would pan out exactly the same with any bald believer that you've happened upon on the street, and you end up discussing politics for the sake of argument. Happier conversation, you just so happen to have the same political views, and you get into a discussion about it. And then the conversation turns to the notion of the sky vacuum. You know, the political discussion in regards to little green men comes up, and you go, well, obviously there's not going to be little green men coming from space. Space is fake. And suddenly the conversation changes tone completely, because they're presented with something that changes their worldview, and they don't want to have to deal with it in that moment, so they'll race against it immediately. And in that guy's case, it wasn't a heliocentric belief, it was just a different belief. But he launched into the same sort of baby truth or attacks that you get from people who've just stumbled upon this subject. We already know it's a globe, idiots. It's common knowledge. Just go and Google, is the Earth flat? That's the level of argumentation they actually used. Pretty poor.
So are you saying this WMD show is a real dynamite show?
Does get qualified. Actually, no,
it's going to blow up over next week.
It was Adam
Well, were there any bombshell points?
I did hear it was the bomb.
It was Adam Meakin that actually qualified it the following day.
It's making a lot of noise.
It was Adam Meakin that... Let's try a fifth time. It was Adam Meakin that actually qualified that on the following day, so it didn't make it into that edit, because it wasn't contemporaneous if I'd have done so that way. But there we go. It's still worth discussing now that in terms of the megaton amount that they qualify nuclear explosions with, a megaton is a qualified amount by how much TNT is detonated. So how many megatons
but someone said
TNT?
But someone said Adam blew it. Come on. There's more.
Yeah, anyway,
all right.
This conversation's not set off any chain reaction, so let's change the subject.
Well, maybe they should tune in and see for themselves.
That's great.
I got a question. Ready for a question?
Yeah, sure.
Has anybody seen the Ring of Fire solar eclipse?
Has anybody seen a full-on eclipse where you get the ring around it in person?
Yeah, wasn't that supposed to just happen?
No, we had a partial eclipse yesterday.
So Ring of Fire doesn't mean total eclipse.
I assume that's what you mean when you say Ring of Fire. I just inferred that's what you meant. A total eclipse where it sort of lights up. How can I verbalize what it looks like? It goes from moving across, transitioning to like a moment where it kind of pops.
No, that's not my question. I'm talking about the one that was supposed to happen. Just June 10th, yesterday. Right?
It was only visible in Canada, Greenland, and that it wasn't. I don't think it was visible in England.
Can you show me somebody who took film and got the ring of fire, please? Anybody?
That far.
No, but Bev posted, he took pictures of it. It was partial eclipse, and he's in England.
But why? Why are you asking?
Yeah, it wasn't total.
Dr.
Because
Goggle.
this,
Go ahead.
it didn't happen as far as I can find. So, and also the great conjunction that was supposed to happen where Jupiter and Saturn were supposed to look like they were one light, that also never happened. Now, these are globe predictions, so they should be happening exactly the way they're predicted to the second, because I just heard this the other day. They predict things to the second. So I have not been able to find from Canada or anywhere else this ring of fire. So
Can you post the claim where it said it was supposed to be a ring of fire?
Yeah,
it was supposed to be a ring of fire.
Let's just get clarity. Was it predicted to be from those locations you mentioned? Totality.
Yes.
And you're saying you aren't able to find anyone that's documented actually filming it?
Correct. I'm looking at this video right now, see if it's...
And what was the other one?
No, it's saying partial.
Yeah, what's the other one, though? You said a partial occultation of Jupiter, where you end up with one light perceived in the night sky. What was that?
Well, there was supposed to be what they called the Great Conjunction, where Jupiter and Saturn were supposed to line up so perfectly that it looked like one light, but it didn't happen.
Okay. Interesting.
And I can't find any ring of fires either.
Okay.
Saying it didn't happen, or you haven't found
Did
a record
not
of
happen.
video?
Didn't happen. Show me where it happened. Didn't happen. Two predictions.
Stop.
Complete bullshit.
Stop. Hello? You should be careful with how you phrase things. There's no need to stick your balls on the chopping block for this, right? So your phraseology, I am unable to find evidence of it, is perfectly acceptable, which is what you said up until now. But did not happen. All right. So when someone shows you that, yeah, it did, what are you going to say then? I was wrong. Well, you don't need to be. You can't find evidence of it.
I can be wrong.
Yeah, that's fine. But why bother putting yourself in that position if you leave it with a little bit of
because
intrigue?
I've already searched high and low for these things, and I cannot find them. So you're gonna at this point have to show me to prove me wrong.
Perfect phraseology. Very interesting, though. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. I hadn't paid it much attention. I mean, my days of looking at eclipses kind of tailed off when I found out Earth was flat. I was very interested in... I got rid of my telescope again after finding out Earth was flat. The fascination dwindled. So, you know, I've been less and less interested in things like eclipses.
Well, people have just posted whole 3 videos in a row.
Yeah, none of them.
Discord.
None of them. Some of them are even from like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. You got to listen to what I'm saying. You know, this past ring of fire, I can't find.
You only get that on a perfect eclipse, not a partial.
Yes, I know. Where is it? Where did it happen? Where's the video showing that we just had a ring of fire? Please show me.
And we're certain it was supposed
Believe
to be.
me, I went through a lot of hours trying to find this, so just throwing videos out there that I've already seen, you know.
You've already
I
said
can
once.
identify almost immediately without even looking at them.
I'm now questioning you again. So you're certain that it was supposed to be totality from those locations? You're certain of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Canada and 2 other places like Asia and Pakistan or something. I forget.
Okay. It was brought it to the attention of an audience.
Okay, so yeah, I'm not accepting that picture. Where's it from and who took it?
Yeah, I understand. I understand what you're asking. The Globe has made a prediction that this what happened yesterday. They were predicting that this would happen yesterday or whatever. And you're saying, where is the evidence that it did happen exactly like that? Is that what you're asking?
Correct.
Okay,
Right.
good summary. Thank you, Brian.
And it was...
Well, I was just going to make
Sorry,
another
Nathan?
point in terms of the question that then follows. So if it did, right, let's just say that they prove you wrong and then they produce evidence of totality. So what? How does that prove their point other than they said that it would happen based on a cyclical motion that they've observed and know the history of versus what they say has actually occurred and then they show you that it did? It's still non sequitur to say that proves the sphere, which is what they would utilise it for if they were to prove you wrong in this circumstance. So it's worth noting at this particular point that regardless of whether or not they prove you wrong, yes, it's interesting, but their logic to get from the eclipse to a heliocentric model is non sequitur or riddled with fallacy.
Yeah, but I think what he's saying, I look, you can correct me, right? Because I'm kind of speaking for you here. But what you're saying basically is that the globe prediction is that such and such a thing should have happened and should have been visible from such and such a location. Show me the evidence that this actually happened, as opposed to the prediction of just an eclipse. The globe's prediction of an eclipse, because that's slightly different, because that involves a globe Earth getting in the way of something.
Okay,
That's correct.
I
And
understand.
they predicted a complete ring of fire, and it did not happen. And now it looks like NASA's own video changed their title to just Solar Eclipse June 10th, because even NASA, nope, didn't happen.
And it burns, burns, burns.
And so
I'm
also the
gonna
Great
ask a
Conjunction
stupid
that they
question.
predicted also. So
I'm
I
gonna ask
found
what
two
maybe a
predictions that are bullshit.
So they got their prediction wrong. Unlike what ballers like to say in chat, how they always get everything right. How did they get everything right? Well, guess what? They just got something wrong,
Not
ballers.
necessarily. Why are you now putting your balls on the same block? Even if it was shown to have happened, we need a baller to now say, under the assumption it did happen, how does that actually link to proving we're on a heliocentric model? Now you're saying, well, no. I'm saying that in the heliocentric model, they assume they've got a prediction of how the eclipse will work, and their model's failed. Well, yeah, it's only a model, you know. So what? Yeah, we knew that already, and now if you want to start rubbing it in their faces, all that'll end up happening is they'll either fudge, fake, forge, or pretend that they've got exactly what they predicted. Lie. And then say that because they've got it, and you're just a denier, that they've won. And because their model predicted it correctly, that correlation now makes the world the sphere. That's how that'll end. In other words, this route, this path that you're about to embark on potentially, is a path that starts with you begging the question of a heliocentric model. Now, you're all tapping each other on the back going, yeah, but that's cool because we're doing it from within their model that they've got a prediction and it's got it wrong. Let's go forth and tell them. This'll end badly.
Yeah, well, we will
I'm
end
not
up
worried.
talking
I've
about
known
why
to be
their
wrong,
model is fake.
but
Sure.
I see a Kuma virus saying that yes for the Ring of Fire and got the Ring of Fire a few times. I asked for the 2021 June 10th Ring of Fire. I don't want from fucking 2019 and 2020 and pictures of bullshit.
Let me get it straight. Let me get this straight. So within literally seconds of my prediction, literally seconds, that actually happened. Now, that wasn't staged or scripted or rigged. I predicted it, and literally seconds later it happened.
Nathan, we
Yeah, it
all
was
know you
happening
mind controlled
as
it
you were
into
predicting
existence.
it.
Yeah, this is
It
what
Yeah,
was
I was
happening
going to
as
say the
you were.
same thing.
you're on the path to begging the question with them, though. So, I mean, this is my point. You can now skip down that road of begging the question about how their model should or shouldn't work with their deceit, lies, and potential to cover up their failings, all of which while you're both begging the question of the model that you're trying to argue about. Right? It's a win-win for him. So this round, I'm going to give to Virus. Kudos, Virus. You've won that one. Because they're begging the question with you.
No, he didn't.
He did. You're begging the question. You're begging the question with him. This is a lose-lose from you. That's my point.
Well, what they're going to do is
I'm sorry. I'm asking
what
for
Virus has
proof
just done.
that it actually happened. They're giving me videos
don't
of some
have that.
other things, and they're not showing me the Ring of Fire, and they're just talking shit like they usually do.
Okay. And
There's no
proving that
difference
happened.
of what's going
right.
on. And I asked for proof.
It's not
of it.
isolated. You're saying prove that the eclipse happened. Okay. Let's say that they do. There's no context given to it unless you're specifically asking the Ball Earth believer, to offer it to you in lieu of their model. So therefore, you must beg the question if you're going to do this with a baller. Otherwise, we're arguing about whether or not an eclipse happened, and only whether or not it happened. So let's say it did. Well, hooray, it did. So we've proven that the eclipse did actually happen. Okay, great, let's move on. Or we proved that it didn't actually happen. Okay, great, let's move on. But that isn't the path you're on. My point is that the path you are on is, did it happen the way the heliocentric model said it would happen? So you're on a begging the question path. It's akin to, just so it's detached from your personal, it's still a very interesting point. I just don't want to seem like I'm demeaning this, but it is akin to us saying, how much curve of the Earth should we see based on the begging the question proof of nothing perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator? Their model got it wrong. Let's see how. Well, we've lost. Immediately, we've lost. Doesn't matter how we argue about how that model got it wrong and where the horizon was or wasn't on that day, because we're both into the begging the question fallacy when we argue about how that model failed. But we see the victory in the fact it failed. No. The opponent, Globe Believer, gets the win immediately. We beg the question, just out of force of habit. So you've lost.
Well, they will give
Okay, well, I still haven't
everything
seen
but
proof
what
of the
you're
Ring
asking
of
for.
Fire from yesterday, so I haven't lost anything. And I've seen a lot of
but-
videos that are just coming out of their asses,
Who's they?
not rings of fire.
Who's they? Their asses. Who are they?
Are you watching the main chat?
Not at all. I never watch their aim chat. Don't even have it up.
You
But who
know,
are they?
Virus, Extremistus, all these people.
Oh, the Globe
They all gang up on me.
Believers.
They love this.
Oh, I see. So they'll definitely be contextualizing this from their globe belief in the model and what it predicted, and do exactly what
now
Brian
that
just said. Lie their way around it.
Yeah, they're going to twist the shit out of all my words. I know. But whatever. All I want is proof from somebody. That's all I asked in the beginning. And I
Proof of
said,
what?
just the other day, I've heard that they can predict to the second, and it looks like this one failed. And so did the Great Conjunction.
Yeah,
So that's all I was saying.
they being heliocentrists, and their prediction
Yes,
being
they said they could predict these things to the second. So I'm saying, well, there goes your predictions. Unless you could show me. And then still, it doesn't prove anything.
That's my
But I
point.
know the way I worded it, you're right. I set myself up for getting fucked like I am currently.
Oh, thank you. That makes me smile.
Okay.
And, let me give him props. That penny drop moment is the moment I love. And because you're a flat earther, you can immediately go, oh, fuck. Yeah. So basically, I've set myself up to be in a situation where I'm arguing about how the model doesn't work. So we're all on the globe page then. And you've just appreciated that in that moment. Thank you for actually expressing that.
What they'll
Yes,
do
you're welcome.
when they can't provide evidence for a claim, and you're asking them for evidence, is they should provide everything from everywhere else and ask questions or throw things at you from everywhere else. And you've dealt with this, I'm sure, before. You're a flat earther for a long time. All they'll ever do is throw everything at you that has nothing to do with what you're asking. It'll be similar, it'll be this, it'll be that, but it will not be on point. They will not give you what you're asking for because they don't have it, and they don't have the humility to accept they don't have it.
We should test that.
Even if it was really there.
Well, as you're in the chat, and you're like, are you in the chat? Presumably you are. Well, what have you been given then? Should we have the what's it called? The conveyor belt of shame? A little bit of house music going along as they present the crap. Let's see what they've actually offered. They've offered stuff, right? Hello?
I'm sorry. I was reading some of these things. They're going after me.
That's what I'm
No one
asking
has
for.
to twist Mark's words. He does it himself. Yeah, I twist my own words. Did I do that?
you've got sucked in so badly that you've lost your focus. What you're reading and your attention's
I'm
been
fine.
drawn away from what I'm asking for is what I'm asking you to share with us. What have they actually offered that's taking your attention away? Share that with us.
Oh, they haven't offered anything. Stuff from 2019, stuff that doesn't have anything to do with yesterday.
Perfect.
Well,
So
I
they have
literally
offered.
just
Hold
Googled
on.
solar eclipse
Rams, please,
June 2021.
please.
Oh.
So they have offered something from 2019. So you asked for, drum roll, yesterday's quote eclipse. Well, you got an eclipse from 2019, correct? That's what they gave you.
And some other stuff, 2020, they're giving me 2021, but I specifically asked for the Ring of Fire, which can only be seen in Canada and 2 other places. I believe it was Pakistan and Asia. I forget.
Okay. So,
but I know one was Canada.
Okay. So you asked for the totality presented, and they've given you the right date, but not the event that was quote unquote predicted in the heliocentric model, begging the question fallacy road that I'm asking you not to go along. But just to illustrate to the audience that what we're saying, the dangers are actually happening now. So you've asked for Ring of Fire on yesterday's date. They've given you Ring of Fire from 2019, or they've given you non-totality from yesterday's date. So what else have they given you? Anything else?
A hard time.
A load of crap. That goes without saying.
Yes, they love to hate me. Ever since I opened my mic in this goddamn place, they love to hate me.
Share your pain, fundies. What will I say?
They hate common sense, man. Don't hate them too bad for it.
It's not all downside when you beg the question with them, because they will be experiencing the cognitive pain of having to defend their model that doesn't work in many instances. Now, this is just one example of that. But like I say, it is technically speaking always going to end as a loser for you because you were begging the question the whole time. But that doesn't mean to say that they're not going to go through some sort of experience of emotional pain and frustration as they can't find what you're asking for in this instance. So they can't give you what you're asking for, and they're trying to get it though, aren't they, right? That's got to be frustrating.
Imagine the pain of the guy who you asked, so can I get the eclipse from yesterday? And he posts the one from 2019. Imagine the pain that person's got to go through. Like, oh my God, like I can't find what he's asking for, so I'm gonna hopefully post this, and maybe he'll accept it. Like that's literally the pain they're going through in their minds, bro. So just sit back and relax and enjoy watching them scramble while you ask for their evidence.
Was there anything
Don't
else
stress yourself out.
Was there anything else that they did offer, though? In other words, they might have offered, for example, an explanation for why you couldn't possibly expect that you should be asking for that. Have you had that, for example?
Not yet. Because it was supposed to be a Ring of Fire, and they all know it, and they can't go back on this now because we've already talked about it.
No race car excuses then. No, well, obviously there was an obscuring weather front that had come in across that entire country that day. There's no race car excuses. Race car driver.
Not yet.
So that at the moment it's just passing off stuff that isn't what you've asked for. Okay.
What they'll do is they'll start telling you things that are in a very matter of fact manner, right? But this is going to be complete and utter horse crap that they're just making up on the spot. But they're going to speak as if they have some kind of authority and information on this.
Wow.
If you listen to Brandon's show a few days ago, Silent Zero came in the other day, and this is on point. This is about begging the question. Silent Zero came in the other day to Nathan's, and he was talking about what he said about this, showing how the speed of light is a load of rubbish. And his simple demonstration was like a mental demonstration where one person stands on the Earth in the heliocentric model, holding one end of a big stick, and the other person is standing on the sun with the other end of the stick. The person at the Earth pushes the stick, and the person standing on the sun feels the push of the stick instantaneously. Now that is so simple, right? It's ingenious from Silent Zero. But as soon as they start talking about it on Brandon's, the amount of unbelievable, total and utter manure they got of the ballers. They talked about everything. They were talking about the speed of sound and how if you just hit one end of the stick, it would take 800 hours for that vibration to get through to the other end. So we're talking about everything, right? Yeah, everything but the physical push of the physical object being instantaneously felt at the other end. Everything but that. You know, I have a video out 5 days, right? And I've gotten every argument from every direction, right? That has nothing to do with my argument. Nobody's addressed the argument in the video.
And that's a win for them.
Yeah. That, you know, what they need to do is character assassinate you, give you red herrings, send you off in every direction possible. And no matter what you try and do, there'll be more and more of them come in, and they'll all agree with each other that you don't know what you're talking about or some other nonsense, while they're all not addressing what you're asking for.
Perfect. That's going to be where I'll round out, though. So with that, I'm going to say another massive, huge, and enormous thank you to both Discord and Google for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Also, below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!